So, do you know who Austin Peterson is?
Yes, he's the guy. He's the libertarian guy who's now running as a Republican, right?
Have you seen what his opponents have said?
No, I haven't.
So, the front runner in the GOP primary just said that the sexual revolution of the 50s and 60s is a major cause of human and sex trafficking. Austin Peterson's about second place right now. The third place person, I forget exactly what he said, but it was to the extent that women should either be pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen or chained to a bed.
What the fuck?
I mean, it wasn't exactly what he said, but I mean, it was like just as bad as that.
Well, I hope he wins for the sake of the Missouri people. He's running in Missouri, isn't he?
Yeah, and he is literally the only Republican in the polls currently beating Claire McCaskill, who was
Oh.
the deciding vote on extending FISA warrants.
You know, I heard I was watching a video the other day about the American economy, and the person who made the video was talking about the Mississippi River, and he was like, via the Mississippi River, Wisconsin cheese, Iowa corn, Missouri racism, it can all be exported throughout the Midwest.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what is he on?
No, well, it was part of the joke, but Missouri's always been that sort of.
The show me state, right?
Yeah.
No, I am currently watching two anarchists debate whether or not it's okay to kill abortion doctors. And it's kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie.
I imagine that the pro side would have something to do with the NAP. Like, he's violating the NAP by aborting the child, therefore it's okay to kill him.
The one who's saying that they're allowed to kill abortion doctors is Hopkins, and another one is just like pure just ANCAP, and it's just hilarious to watch. And now they're getting into like Plato's The Truth. I'm honestly just not sure what's going on. I tried to say that just because people are murderers doesn't mean you should be allowed to be a murderer, or you should allow murder. I mean, but they're just going off, and I don't even want to follow. But no, were you watching me and Brian debate like last night?
No. Who's Ryan and what happened?
Brian literally said, "I don't care how many people die as long as it's like not mass shootings." I said the homicide rate in Australia has not changed since the gun ban, or the rate of change has not changed because it's been going down about the same rate. And he's like, "But there's been no mass shootings," and I'm like, "There's been no mass shootings in England, but the homicide rate has gone up." And he's like, "Let me just move the goalpost real quick."
Hey, get back here with those goalposts. We're having an argument.
Yeah, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ! I literally said that you are a shit person who has no regard for human life.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of interesting, the media fixation on mass shootings, because there's a murder in Philadelphia more than once a day. And I know this because I have a friend who lives in Philadelphia, and he hears police sirens like 24/7. But there's no coverage of that. There's no coverage of gang violence in Chicago. It's only mass shootings, mostly in schools, that the media wants to focus on. And I don't really understand.
You can't enforce change through emotion if you don't have a propaganda tool.
Right.
No. And he's like, "Why are people allowed to have 17 guns?" And I'm like, "Because we can." Have you ever heard of Athens, Tennessee?
It's the right to bear arms, not the need to bear arms.
Yeah. No, I literally asked him about the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, and he's like, "I don't agree with their methods." And I'm like, "They tried democratic change, and the sheriff tried to kill him. So they fought back and and attacked the sheriff and his goons."
Let me just start a petition. Dear Sheriff, can you please stop shooting all the black people in town when they try to vote for the opposite person? No, it was
GIs after World War II who were getting attacked by the sheriff and his goons because they were a bunch of criminals.
Yeah. But there was one point where some black person tried to vote for the opposite candidate, and they just had him lynched. Like, they just fucking lynched him, and then that was part of the lead up to the big event.
If the police state is racist and against minorities, why should we trust the police to be the only people with guns?
Precisely, and like Stefan Molyneux said, there's no such thing as gun control, only centralization of guns into the hands of the small political elite and their minions. That's probably my favorite. I haven't actually
heard that. That's pretty good.
Oh, really? You haven't heard that?
I watch some of Stefan's stuff. I don't like binge it, so I watched some of his new stuff if it's not like 2 hours long.
I used to binge his stuff like 2 years ago, maybe. That was back when I was in ANCAP for a brief period of time.
Phase?
Yeah.
We've all been there. I had one. It's debatable whether or not it's ended, but to some people. And no, like, I kind of binged Adam Kokesh during my edgy ANCAP phase.
Who is he? I never heard of him.
He's an Iraq veteran who started Iraq Veterans Against the War, and now he's just like the provocative ANCAP who like gets arrested like all the time. He literally January 13th, I think it was that day, he filed his paperwork to become a libertarian candidate for president in 2020. He got arrested.
For what?
That day, within 24 hours.
Well, did he do something illegal?
No, they held him for 10 days, never gave him his paperwork, barely let him see his lawyer, then released him with no charges, and all charges dropped.
Well, if there were no charges, how could they drop charges?
Well, sorry, I meant there was no charges because they dropped him.
Oh.
Because they used a drug dog when they knew that he had a dog in his RV.
Do they know what the original charges were? Or do we know?
Possession of contraband, basically just drugs, but they used a drug dog when there's a dog in the RV, and in a lot of places it used to be illegal. I think they legalized it as a tool for the drug war, but it was illegal because drug dogs will always get a hit if there is a dog in the vehicle.
Huh.
Always get a hit.
Well, because they smell the other dog and go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they didn't find any physical evidence. That was just enough to arrest him for 10 days.
God damn.
They had little protests outside the jail.
You know, it would be funny if it turned out that he actually did have drugs in his car.
Well, he self-medicates, is all I'm gonna say. But he said that he had no drugs at the time.
Yeah, I'm self-medicating with these 32 kilos of pure cocaine.
He's
driving across the Mexican border.
I think he said he uses mushrooms. And pot. No, but like they dumped a bunch of his electronics in the toilet. They trashed his RV, put his dog in the pound, didn't let him get his dog, barely let him get his dog out. They just trashed his RV, which he was living out of because he is on tour right now.
Oh, damn.
And they didn't need to put electronics in the sink. That was just, sorry, I'm pissed off.
Yeah, we need less drug war in this country.
Oh my god, so my principal, people are apparently juuling a lot at my school, which is like vaping but with nicotine. And so he sends out an email, I think it was Tuesday, that says, if we find you with jewels on campus, we can expel you and or prosecute you under law. The next day we have an assembly, and he's like, I don't want to control your actions, I just want to influence them. No joke. But if you get your fucking phone out during the assembly, I'm gonna have my teacher goons come and take it from you.
Damn.
I'm like, please feed me some of your more war on drugs propaganda.
Yeah, in my school there was a vaping problem, and you know what they did? This is pathetic. So, this actually happened this week. What they did was, they have a new rule where, well, you always have to carry your school ID around with you, even if you're not in a place where you're going to be asked for your ID.
They try and do that, except for the fact that no one has it.
Well, that's old news. That's old news. Sorry. But now what they have us do is they have someone waiting outside the bathroom. And to get into the bathroom, you have to give them your ID and give them your name and your ID number. And you go in the bathroom and you come out and you get your ID back.
So that way, if they find vape in the bathroom, they know it was you.
Yeah.
That's just retarded.
Although
they're paying someone to literally stand outside of a bathroom like a fucking 5-star restaurant bathroom waiter. You know what I'm talking about?
As my English teacher said, you now have to show your ID to get into Club Vape.
No, they tried to make us all use IDs, but they're literally pathetic IDs that break when you put your thumb on it, so nobody ever has it. So, but no, it was just hilarious. I'm like, what the? Now they also search cars without permission. If they get a hit with a drug dog in an area, they'll search all the cars in the parking lot in that area. And I'm
That's probably illegal.
They put it into the contract to let you have a parking pass.
Oh, okay.
But then they don't let you park anywhere else in the city. If you're a kid who parks near restaurants, in restaurant parking lots nearby that are actually open to the public, they take away your parking pass. They can punish you for that. Not just your parking pass, they'll fine you and shit. Or give you detention.
I have a friend who recently moved to North Carolina, in the west part, in Appalachia, and he says there's a bunch of meth down there.
Oh, I live in Ohio. There's a shit ton of meth here.
Oh, yeah?
I have a friend who lives out in the boondocks, who, they have this, nice wooden cabin, and it's just surrounded by exploded, trailer homes. It's this pristine, nice log cabin. It's been in their family for generations.
Trailer meth labs. Jesus.
And I think it's the same 2 families that just can't fucking make any meth successful. That keep trying.
Well, if they're unsuccessful, how do they have the money to keep buying RVs?
I don't know. And they're living in RVs, so maybe they're an RV repair shop where they steal fucking RVs.
Maybe.
I don't know. Oh, sorry, we had to impound it because it didn't work. We couldn't fix it. So here's here's a little bit of money, but they're secretly using it as a meth lab. I don't know.
You know what would be great if and this is obviously not great, but if there was a sort of shady back deal going on between the cops who bust RVs, impound them, and then sell them to meth labs. That would be just...
No, they just sell those to the highest bidder.
Oh, yeah? Well,
yeah, no.
That could very well be happening then, because it could be sort of an unspoken
maybe
agreement.
I don't know, but they sell shit they confiscate to the highest bidder once the case is over. How do you think that cops have nice cars?
I don't know. I thought they just got paid a lot.
Public servants getting paid a lot. Unless you're a congressman, that doesn't happen. No.
Well, the congressmen get paid a lot because they vote to increase their own pay, which is a wonderful thing that they put in the Constitution. That's just great.
My question is, why do they get paid during government shutdowns that they literally cause?
Because they vote to pay themselves. And I don't even think this is avoidable, because even if you founded a country and put it in the Constitution that the congressmen are paid this amount and they can't change it, they're just going to amend the Constitution because they have the power to do that.
Well, they still have to get all the states to affirm it.
Yeah, but then they can do deals with the governors and all that.
No, it's by popular vote.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The only amendment that has, I'd say, shady voting is actually the 16th Amendment that allowed the income tax. When most state ballots were sent to D.C. for confirmation, they were ripped. The container holding the ballots was ripped. So that they could have potentially tampered with votes. And that was at least 5 to 10 states.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's why I always say that amendment should just be null and void right now. Redo it.
Well, to be fair, if they did that, then everyone would vote to bring back income tax, because we're at a point in this country where we can't fund the government without having income tax. Unless we have, like, a massive corporate tax or something. Which
Or
we already
we just,
do,
you know,
to be fair.
Shrink government.
Hey, good idea.
Honestly,
Oh wait,
I
neither
called
party
Trump a
wants to
fucking
do that. Damn it.
socialist during the State of the Union speech, and my parents got really pissed at me. But I'm like, how is he not a socialist? Your parents literally fled Yugoslavia. Can you tell any differences in what he's saying?
Wait, who called who a socialist?
I called Trump a socialist.
Why is he a socialist?
An infrastructure plan to match FDR's price controls, paid maternity leave, an ever-increasing role of the federal government in business. I know he says he cuts like 20 regulations for everyone he produces, but look at the importance of the regulations he cuts and the importance of the regulations he creates.
Well, even FDR wasn't a socialist.
Shut your mouth, you piggo. If FDR isn't a socialist, then you're a goddamn commie.
No, because this is sort of the misuse of the term socialism. He was maybe a social democrat, and even Bernie Sanders isn't a proper socialist, because
here's my opinion on that. I know you say that the workers must own the means of production in a socialist state.
Well, it's to collectivize the means of production. Whether that be the government collectivizing it or the workers, I mean...
I'd say the government collectivizing it, and since the workers elect the government, I'd say that the government... As long as government has the power to collectivize the means of production, then the workers do.
Well, but I don't think the government in the United States collectivizes the means of production.
Do you know how many U.S. car companies are actually owned by the U.S. government or were at a time?
I do not.
Chrysler was owned by the U.S. government at one point.
Well, it isn't now, is it?
When the U.S. government bailed out Chrysler, they bought so much stock in it that they owned it.
I would argue that since we have private property rights, then we don't live in socialism, because like in Venezuela, people call it socialist, and they're kind of right. It's not proper socialism. I would say it's like pseudo-socialism, because the government has the power to basically seize any property that they want, and that has shown the people de facto that there really isn't any right to own property in Venezuela. So essentially, what you get is capital flight, right?
Well,
so that's like on the road to socialism.
State capitalism, Steve, is the path to communism.
I don't disagree necessarily.
Do you know who said that?
Who said that?
Vladimir fucking Lenin.
Well, that's because it was part of the communist ideology that you first set up a state capitalist system and then moved to socialism.
Yes, because capitalism is the necessary pre-evolution of communism and socialism. Yeah, I understand communist literature. Don't worry, Steve.
I didn't say you didn't understand it. I'm just
a good friend of mine's a Trotskyist. Not really a good friend of mine anymore because he's a dirty Antifa supporter. But he was a Trotskyist about a year ago. I think he might have moved to more libertarian socialism, libertarian communism. And yes, I know that left libertarianism doesn't make sense, but we stole the word from them, so I don't mind if they use it. Because Murray Rothbard actually stole the word libertarian from the European socialist and communist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I don't get really feisty when people say that they're left libertarian, because I know that makes sense, historically speaking. Anyway, so I went onto this leftist server recently, and I started calling all the European pinkos and dirty socialists. And they're like, how are we socialist? And I'm like, how are you not? The state owns the means of production in most of Europe, or at least they can control it enough that they de facto own it. And I'm like, Yugoslavia, during their Tito's rule, had some more economic freedom than modern Europe today does.
I'm not sure that's correct.
Market. What?
I'm not necessarily sure that's correct.
Well, Tito allowed a black market to grow because he knew that actually could feed his people.
Right, but de jure the country was socialist.
De jure, it might have been no economic freedom, but de facto I mean, you might get the secret police every once in a while say the image of control, but no.
Yeah.
My parents fled Yugoslavia, so whenever someone says that they want socialism or communism, like, you're just a naive 19-year-old who's never talked to someone from the Eastern Bloc outside of Russia. Because the Russians were basically the bourgeois of the Soviet Union.
Oh yeah. Have you seen that guy on the We the People app, Waffles? He's from Romania, and he's a communist.
Yeah, well, there's very few of those because they want to restore the glory. I mean, communism in Eastern Europe is basically just nationalism, in my opinion. They want to restore the old glory.
There was a poll done in Russia where it was like, would you revert back to the Soviet era? And a lot of people said yes, and their reason was, well, that's when Russia was great. Like, we want to make Russia great again.
Yes,
you know?
I mean, that's why I say the only communists in Eastern Europe are mostly only communist. I mean, there's a few actual pure communists because they want that super state back. They want to feel that they had prestige in the world. I mean, that's why I think Putin is so popular, because he's basically recreating the Soviet Union, or trying to.
I don't think Putin's a communist, though.
He's not a communist, but he's recreating that prestige they had.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I think it's very strange that people would prefer a system where would prefer to revert back to a state where their country was powerful, but the individual person was less powerful or was more oppressed. Like, I don't really understand that as an individualist.
Well, it's the whole tribe mentality. Human beings are naturally collectivist. We've been collectivists for all of history. I mean, we have the tribes of ancient humans that all had the leaders that made the decisions, right?
Yeah.
You literally have to transcend and evolve to become an individualist.
I guess so.
Which most humans are not capable of doing, obviously, or are not want to do.
Well, it's not like all humans are doomed to be collectivist. I mean, since the Enlightenment, we've had pretty much individualist thought up until the modern day, except for fringe movements like like
basically the 30s and 40s,
things like that. Yeah, 30s and 40s.
1910s with communism. But
although this is one of the reasons why I'm so wary today of the SJWs and the alt-right, because the SJWs, just the social justice movement. Yeah, it's like a return to collectivism, and it's gaining popular momentum, even though it's just a collectivist and identitarian ideology. Yeah, no, which is weird that it's gaining so much popularity.
I'd say the fringe of the alt-right is definitely identitarian. I think a lot of people get unfairly labeled alt-right. I'm very anti-SJW, so I'm called alt-right a lot, but I'm just like, no, I just think that you're retarded. So you have to be careful when you say the alt-right is collectivist, because I'm saying, yes, there are very large identitarian movements in the alt-right, and I'd say that a large chunk of the alt-right is identitarian and collectivist, especially like the Spencerian groups and the neo-fascist groups. But there is a large chunk. I'd say the alt-right is not collectivist, or is somewhat collectivist. But I'm just anti-SJW because I've been seeing this shit since 2010 with Gamergate in 2009. And do you remember that at all?
Yeah.
That's what made me stop being a goddamn socialist. Not even joking.
Your point about the alt-right is like, I was watching clips recently where Milo Yiannopoulos was calling himself alt-right. Well, not necessarily calling himself alt-right, but not refuting that he's a voice for the alt-right, at least.
He's actually said he's not part of the alt-right, even though he's a large influencer. So he has gone on record saying that.
Yeah, but back like 1 or 2 years ago, he was more closely associating himself with the alt-right, and that's kind of weird to me because the history of the alt-right. Yeah, it's like it was started by Richard Spencer as a far-right identitarian movement, for white nationalism. But then it kind of expanded into just a name for the internet right wing, or like the pro-Trump faction of conservatives. And then it receded again recently after Charlottesville, back into the Richard Spencer kind of thing. And then this is what pisses me off about leftists. A lot of them will mislabel people as alt-right who really aren't, and they get confused a lot with who's just a conservative and who's just an alt-right. For example, I was watching...
You mislabel the person, now who's who is an actual racist now, it's hard to actually determine, right?
Yeah. I was watching a TED Talk, and this black guy was talking about how he was, like, infiltrating the alt-right or something, and he came across figures such as Milo Yiannopoulos and Richard Spencer and Millennial Woes. It's like, wait. All of those guys are different. That Milo is nothing like Richard Spencer or Millennial Woes, okay?
Never heard of Millennial Woes, actually.
Oh, he's just this stupid white nationalist guy who doesn't have any good arguments. He did a debate with Sargon of Akkad a while ago.
I'm not gonna lie, they tend not to have good arguments other than the bell curve.
But yeah, I'm gonna read to you a quote by Richard Spencer, and this is when I realized that Richard Spencer is the Antichrist. Alright? So he says, "I think the Soviet Union protected Russians from an even worse ideology, that is the liberalism of the United States and Western Europe." And of course, by liberalism, he just means like centrism, like capitalism and
race mixing, probably
individualism and stuff like that. So he's basically saying, you know what, communism was okay because it protected white Russians from the evils of capitalism. And I'm like, oh my god.
Well, Richard Spencer isn't a capitalist. I mean, he's never been a capitalist. Yeah. Except for, like, when he was a libertarian, weirdly enough.
He was a libertarian?
Well, he spoke a lot at libertarian events. He stumped for Ron Paul at one point.
Oh yeah, this kind of leads into the libertarian to alt-right pipeline. Have you heard this meme before?
Yes, I have.
What do you think about that? Because I'm kind of perplexed.
There was a good video I saw that's saying that it's actually the flaw of libertarianism that the pipeline has existed, because many libertarians who become alt-right, the libertarian phase was literally just a phase that was never cemented by the libertarian ideology. And they're not really intellectual libertarians, they're just, I don't like government, therefore I'm a libertarian, because government is run by the Jews and blacks and socialists. Right?
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of libertarians becoming alt-right because they're like, Jews run the government, therefore we should fix the government.
Yeah, it's kind of a shit show, I think, because I'm actually sort of astounded at how much the alt-right is gaining popularity. And by alt-right, I mean like the proper alt-right, you know, like the Richard Spencer white nationalist types.
I think that they're gonna die down for a little bit, especially after Charlottesville. They're gonna surface. They're gonna go down under the surface. They're gonna regroup, and then they're gonna come back when the left makes a fool of themselves again. More.
I think the alt-right is a direct reaction to the social justice left, because
they're a reactionary group. They need something to react to.
Yeah.
They react off of each other. They're both very reactionary groups. Both needs the other to survive.
Actually, I don't know about that, because the SJWs got along fine without the alt-right.
That's true. I don't think the SJWs need the alt-right to survive. You're right. They need the image of the alt-right, though, because to SJWs, everyone right of fucking Karl Marx is a fascist. But they need the specter of fascism, right? Not the specter of communism in this case.
Yeah.
To exist. So they at least need what they call fascist and right reactionaries, you know. So they don't necessarily need the alt-right, but they need what they believe is the alt-right.
Yeah, the social justice movement is certainly being accelerated because of the alt-right. It's like, hey, look, there's Nazis. We were right all along, guys. Look at the Nazis. And the alt-right is like...
look at the 200 Nazis that exist around America.
And then the alt-right goes, oh my god, they're communists again. And then we have, like, Weimar Germany all over again in the United States, right? Between commies and Nazis.
Out of curiosity, I was watching this documentary on Netflix called Accidental Courtesy.
What's that about?
It's about a black man who tries to befriend KKK members and get them out. he actually was able to cause the resignation of the national leader of the KKK organization.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and guess what?
What?
Black Lives Matter hates him. Do you know why?
No.
Because he is a race traitor. It is really interesting how reactionary, like I said before, the left has now become. He's like the KKK. Many members of the KKK actually like me because I will at least listen to them, and they'll like me more than white liberals because they see the white liberals as a traitor to their race. Well, I'm already just a lower race to them. But he says I see the same thing coming from Black Lives Matter and the cultural left because they see me as a traitor to the race by trying to befriend their enemy.
Yeah.
But no, it's a really good documentary. I think you'd like it because he's a musician too, so he's got some like funny stuff. Just talking about music with KKK members. But no, it's either incidental courtesy or accidental courtesy. You'll see an image of a huge fat black dude on it as the main thing. That's the guy.
How could you be a traitor to your race? Because when you think traitor, like, it means you're being treacherous toward an ideal, maybe, or to a nation. But
to a collectivist group, a race. To a collectivist group like Black Lives Matter, the KKK, their race is a group. Their race is an ideology. Their race is a tribe. That's the problem. They both see the race as a tribe that has one unified goal, and one unified message, and one unified ideal.
Because the word race traitor only makes sense, really, if you consider your race to be
like a nation or a unified group.
Right.
That's
collective, if you will, or an identity.
Yeah. So there is no difference, in my opinion, between KKK and Black Lives Matter other than the level of violence they're willing to commit.
Right. Well, there are a few ideological differences. I mean, I doubt that Black Lives Matter would be into the same sort of ethno-state as would the KKK because I think they're more influenced by Marxism than...
That's true. They might not be for an ethno-state, but they believe that all white people are inherently racist, therefore people of color need to be overrepresented in government.
Right. Because they're like... Okay, so yesterday, Cole said something interesting in one of the threads. He was like, we should get... we should have reparations for the third world. We should transfer wealth from the first world to the third world because first worlders 100 or 200 years ago took it from the third world with colonialism. And I was like, well, why does that make sense? What have any first worlders done so that you can punish them individually and take their wealth? And what have any third worlders done so that they earn the wealth?
Well, it's the same concept as race reparations, right? Reparations for black people in America because their ancestors were slaves and their ancestors were harmed before the civil rights movement really finished its goals. Because we now see our races, our countries as this tribe, our identities as a tribe that need to be protected, that need to be advanced against the goals of the other tribes. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with modern collectivism. They will eventually find a war. It might be a war of words right now, but there will be physical violence that will become more large scale than it has so far. Because as long as we see that the other group is an enemy tribe that's trying to destroy us, we must then retaliate and destroy them.
Unknown Ninja's in the chat. Does he want to come on and talk?
Wait, is that Ninja? Yeah, that's Ninja. Wasn't Ninja a host, I thought?
Wasn't he what?
Wasn't he a host, I thought? Maybe I'm thinking Freethy.
Maybe.
I'm probably thinking Freethy. But Ninja...
No, he can't talk. All right.
We're kind of talking about the modern collectivization of race groups like the KKK and Black Lives Matter right now, and just how it correlates with the rise of tribalism in modern politics.
Hmm. But people have always sort of been tribalistic.
Yeah, I know.
more with respect to their party and not to their race. And I don't think tribalism to a party is as bad as to a race, because you can choose whether or not you're in that party, you know? But you can't choose a race. Well, the problem is,
racial identities are often tied to parties. The black people to the Democratic Party, white people to the Republican Party. I mean, it's just an evolution of race-based identity.
Here's a question for you.
What?
I've been mulling this over in my head. Do you think you choose your beliefs?
It's an idea of nature versus nurture, right? There is some predisposed things that you'll have, like where you live, who your family is, predetermined, who your friends are, who you start listening to, who you start educating. Because many people, they'll find one idea and really not try to learn more about the other ideas.
Mm.
They don't want to be challenged. But there's also things like they've done studies that conservatives are generally more attractive than liberals because they got more advantages earlier in life being attractive, that they become more individualistic than those who are unattractive and feel like they need help.
Yeah.
In economics. Or the fact that, okay, here's a good thing. Here's an interesting point. My parents came from Yugoslavia. My dad immigrated here. My mom was born here. I visited Turkey a couple of years ago. My grandma tried to convince me that all Turks are evil people, right? Because she remembers her village being burned down by Ottoman soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's not going to go to a party that really loves Turkish people, is she? For example. So there are predetermined historical events that will lead you to your identity and to your political beliefs if you do not transcend past them and see logic and reason.
Yeah. Although, when I mean do you choose your beliefs, I mean it a bit more literally, because if you believe something, then presumably you've been reasoned into believing it, right? And
generally, yes. But you also have to consent to being reasoned into it. Like, you can't just get reasoned into it forcefully.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if you are reasoned into something, can you choose what makes sense to you and what doesn't make sense to you? Like, if I am reasoned into, for example, being a libertarian, and this is because just market economics makes sense to me, can I choose for market economics not to make sense to me?
Well, yes, you can. I mean, Noam Chomsky is a brilliant fucking man. He is very persuasive. He's wrong, in my opinion, but he is probably one of the biggest influencers in modern social democracy and democratic socialism, in my opinion. Ron Paul was a huge influencer in bringing people from the left to the right because they believed that they had reasoned themselves into that belief of the left. But then people like Ron Paul were able to bring them to the right. I mean, I wasn't directly influenced by Ron Paul, but the Ron Paul revolution, the people that came to the libertarian ideas from the left were the ones that influenced me to becoming more libertarian.
He's here, but he's eating.
Alright, Tomato, just listen in and you can come back, and when you're done eating, just, if you think of anything, just bring it up or text it in the group, in the server.
I think he's Liberty is My Religion, isn't he? From the app.
I don't know. Are you?
Yeah, he is. Okay.
Okay.
Because I was. Huh?
I kind of like him. Not gonna lie, he's chill.
Yeah, I was on a thread, and I think he asked if anyone had a YouTube channel or something, and I said, yeah, I have two, one for podcasts and one for my own use, and he was like, oh, link me to him. So.
Yeah.
So get in the Discord link.
I think we should re-advertise the podcast again on We the People, just because there's more people on it now.
Yeah.
But no, the problem is tribalism is an inherent factor of humans, right? So you have to be reasoned out of tribalism, in my opinion. Because tribalism is not inherently a reasonable idea. At least not anymore. It was essential for self-preservation and group preservation during the times that tribalism was needed, during the chaotic times of history. But now that we are actually not a world at peace, but we are fairly at peace, that we don't need this tribalism. We don't need this nationalism that brings us into isolationism, whether it's neoconservative foreign policy or strict isolationism. Like, I don't really know who's an isolationist in America.
Donald Trump, to some degree.
I think he's more in the neoconservative foreign policy that's going to isolate him more than the rest of it, because he's not going to end the war in Iraq or Afghanistan. He's not going to end the war on terror like he really should.
I don't necessarily agree that we need to end all tribalism, because
we don't need to end all tribalism. Tribalism is necessary for self-preservation, like your family unit. I don't want to just. The family unit is the smallest tribe that you can possibly have.
By the way, there's a bit of background noise coming from your end.
Sorry, I don't have push to talk on, so just you might pick up random stuff. But there's like no one else here. It's just like I don't really know.
Well, no, it sounds like you're brushing something against your microphone, or like
I'm flicking my headphones. That might be it.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
I'll stop that, but
all right.
It's interesting that Marxists are very tribal and very anti at some point. They the family unit is the first thing that gets dismantled in a truly Marxist society. I mean, Marx was against the family unit. We can see this through the cultural Marxism, like the welfare state, that's dismantled the family unit in Black America.
Right, because part of Marxist thought is that you need to be the individual needs to be rid of any force in society which might make him enslaved in some way, and because Marx thought of the family as being enslaving to the worker, because you have to be beholden to your family, and if you don't have a family, then you can focus on
the good, the collective.
Right, the good of not only the society but your own work, and the work that doesn't alienate you.
Yeah, no, but why be it's also a control thing. Why? I mean, like Lyndon B. Johnson, right? Why he's we want to enact the Great Society so the Negro will be voting Democrat for the next 200 years. I believe is his exact words. Is either Negro or the actual N-word. I can't remember.
Actually, that quote is unverified, but he did call the 1957 Civil Rights Act the Nigger Bill, and that is verified. So, I mean, obviously, he signed it for his own personal gain. That's why you don't see Republicans as the actual ones who passed the Civil Rights Act. You see the Democrats of Lyndon B. Johnson, even though the Democrats were the biggest harm to the Civil Rights Amendment and Civil Rights Acts, not Amendment Acts, but no, which I'm against, basically for multiple parts of the act. But anyway, why be married to a man or to a woman, and why be beholden to a father when you can either be married to the state or be the child of the state? Yeah, but Marx was inherently anti-state, though. But, I mean, Marx is not what a Marxist really is now, in my opinion. Marxists have become way more statist over years and decades. Even anarcho-communists are like, liberals get the bullet, too. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Marx, I think, liberals might have not... Too. Oh, I don't think Marxist communism would have been bad, because Marxist communism wouldn't have enforced communism throughout the territory. That would have become anarchist, right? I mean, anarchy is still bad. They, actually, Marxist communism isn't that different from modern-day Marxism, because what the Marxists are all about is having the entire society, not just the government, but all the facets of society, culture, family, work, like everything, having a massive revolution that overturns the bourgeois culture. I know, but that would be enforced through your ideas and through culture. I mean, in a stateless society, like Marx said he believed in, which I don't really know if that's true, you could argue for the dictatorship of the proletariat that eventually dismantled, that you really can't dismantle a government once you give it absolute power, in my opinion. But anyway, I mean, it's the same thing as anarcho-capitalism, right? And anarcho-capitalism, it's not just the only economic system isn't capitalism to allow people to choose their economic system, as long as it's a community, right? Yeah, but in anarcho-capitalism, it's just as utopian as Marxism in some respects, because, I didn't just bring that up because I thought it was interesting. Gonna get into. But the reason why I'm actually going to disagree with you. I don't think anarcho-capitalism
utopia, because there's very few people who believe that anarcho-capitalism will be utopia. I know a lot of ANCAPs, and they're like, we don't think it'll be perfect, but at least people will be free.
Right, but that's sort of... I mean, when I say utopia, I mean more that they think like...
I think that dangerous freedom is better than any form of slavery.
So what they think is that human nature is inherently in line with the non-aggression principle.
That's true. I think that...
And I don't think...
necessarily think that. I think that they think that as long as there's enough people to defend the group defense, then it's possible.
Well, I don't really think humans are inclined towards ANCAP morality, which is,
That's true.
Because if you have like one person like Alexander the Great or Narmer the Great or Genghis Khan, one person that's very industrious, shall we say, then that kind of destroys the entire anarchist society because he just wants to control everyone. And
that's why also many ANCAPs don't argue for revolution, unlike communists, because they want to bring people into that morality and that state of mind, which I think doesn't make them good, but it makes them much better than an ANCOM.
Maybe that's possible, and I don't know. Like if they did try to slowly transform society into that route, I don't know if I would necessarily be against it, but
I don't think it would work, but I think it makes them a much less evil than a form of anarchist.
I don't think I don't think it would work either, but so the reason why I asked whether people choose their own beliefs is because we were talking about race and racism for a second there, and it's my opinion that some forms of bigotry are worse than others. For example, I was having an argument with my friend about the Trump's Muslim ban, and he argued that Trump is a racist for doing the Muslim ban, and I said, well, no, it's against Islam, which is a religion, so that's not a race. And he said,
it's not even really against Islam, it's against the countries that can't contain their extremism.
Well, he said, well, what's the difference between being against a religion and being against a race? And I said, well, those are two different forms of bigotry, and racism is worse than the other because you can't choose your race.
That's kind of true. I don't think you should be against a religion, but I mean, Islam is not really just truly religious, it's also a political machine. Like, Christianity is no longer the political machine it used to be. It is no longer the authoritarian regime. Like, Christianity used to rule countries, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at that
Still
point...
does in some places.
It does in some places, but around the world it has largely become a non-governing factor. I mean, it influences policymakers, but we have separation of church and state. There is no control of the state by the church. And Islam, this church runs the state in many countries, or if it doesn't, it tries to.
Or the state runs the church.
Yeah, or the state runs the church, like in Saudi Arabia. But like organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas are trying to create theocracies, or at least not theocracies, but at least theocratic like dictatorships and oligarchies, or like the Taliban in Afghanistan, or Al Qaeda. I mean, Islam is not. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Islam by itself if it could reform and modernize. If it could reform and modernize.
Well, I don't think that's even possible, because if you could reform Islam to be in line with Western liberalism, then you wouldn't have Islam anymore. Because Islam in itself is sort of like a political ideology of the medieval conqueror, which was essentially what Muhammad was. I mean,
more like the secular Muslim, kind of like Judaism today, where basically most Jews aren't actually really Jewish. They're just Jews, right?
I'm getting a lot of static over there.
I don't know why. That's not supposed to see. I'm gonna take out my... Oh, you know how like many Jews today are barely religious?
Yeah.
I think if Islam became like that, it wouldn't be much of a problem. Like, you still say that you practice, but like really, you're not truly religious in that respect.
Well, Judaism is a different sort of belief structure than Islam, because it doesn't.
I'm saying if it could become that, it wouldn't be. I mean, it's not inherently evil. Nothing inherently is evil except for collectivism. The problem is it has become collectivist and authoritarian.
True, but I'm just saying that if you could reform Islam to be that, then it really wouldn't be Islam anymore at that point.
That's true. I get what you mean. But anyway, Islam, like I'm saying, is you can't really be racist or religionist or whatever you want to call it against Islam, because Islam is not just something that you're a part of; it is a machine.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to bring that up. I'm like, are you against the Muslim Brotherhood? If being against the Muslim Brotherhood is being against Islam, then sign me up for being against Islam.
Yeah.
Or if it's being against the Wahhabism churches is being against Islam, sign me up for being against Islam. Or being against the Taliban is being against Islam, sign me up. The problem is, modern liberals believe that we owe just as much to non-citizens and to foreigners as we do to Americans. That we need to bring in everyone to the fact where it's a potential danger to Americans to bring in people from the Middle East. They don't fucking care because they believe that everyone has the same value as an American. I believe I know I'm being really collectivist for saying that, but I'm like, I hold no responsibility for someone in Iraq as long as I'm not fucking up their country.
Oh yeah, no, this is one of the reasons why I said earlier that I don't think we should get rid of all forms of tribalism, because I think that civic nationalism is a very viable form of tribalism, or collectivism if you want to say that it's collectivist, because if you think about what the nation state is, it's essentially a contract between the people and the government, so that the government protects the rights of the people and the people vote in the government. And you don't. Your government, therefore, has no responsibility to people who it does not have the social contract with, i.e. the people outside its borders, the people who aren't citizens, can't vote for your government. So, honestly, I don't think it's a good idea to pretend like your government has a moral duty to anyone outside its borders.
They have a moral duty not to, like, invade them or commit aggression against them, but that's basically the extent of it.
Perhaps, but that's at the discretion of the voters, though, isn't it? Like,
it is, but I mean,
in an ideal world, the voters would decide, or rather, like, Congress at least would decide whether we went to war with anyone. But
I mean, we have, like,
you know,
our invasions in Iraq, both of them were immoral. I mean, 3 of them, basically, at this point. We've invaded Iraq 3 times, in my opinion. The Gulf War, the war that took out Bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, sorry, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And right now I feel like we're invading Iraq again with ISIS. But that's immoral. We have a moral duty not to unjustly invade another country, and that's about it. But I will say that the most convincing argument I've heard has come from Locke. International relations really, truly are the state of nature. And therefore, they have very few moral duties to other countries. So, because if you don't look out for yourself, then it becomes a state of war, and you will lose the state of war.
So, in your opinion, what are the key differences between libertarians and classical liberals? Because I would call myself a classical liberal personally, and I wouldn't really call myself a libertarian.
Well, why do you define yourself as a classical liberal, not a libertarian?
Because libertarians, in my view, have sort of devolved into this purity spiral of, do you accept the non-aggression principle? It's like, classical liberalism is all about the belief that the state is responsible for protecting the natural rights of the citizens, and that's the purpose of the state. And
well,
this
everyone
doesn't
but an
really...
anarchist says that if they're libertarian.
What?
Well, in the libertarian spirit, everyone but an anarchist say that.
Perhaps, but
because I still believe that we need a court system to protect natural rights. I still believe that we need police to protect our natural rights.
Right, but in my opinion, I don't think it's necessarily bad if you have a social safety net, because that's essentially the state guaranteeing some form of security for its citizens without violating the individual liberty of
How do you get the money to
citizens.
form that small social safety net?
Well, where do you get the money to fund the police force?
What type of tax would you set? What type of tax would you have?
A tax? What do you mean?
What
I
type
don't
of
think
taxes would you
income
have in your society
taxes
that
are.
would enable the social security net.
I don't think
Because
income
when I say
taxes are very
military,
important.
I don't believe in a standing federal army or Marine Corps. I only believe in standing federal Air Force and Navy with state guards and a federal structure in times of war for generals and all that. And by courts and police, I mean police would have very few laws to enforce. Therefore, it wouldn't cost as much money because they don't need tanks in some areas. They don't need to be on the job looking for like fucking pot smokers.
Well, yeah, but like if you think about it from a principled perspective, in a society where you have the right to pursue as much wealth as you want, and where your success is determined largely by your own initiative, and you basically have liberal capitalism, which is what I'm for. Then,
Well, Steve, do you know
What?
how much of the War on Poverty's budget is actually spent on poor people?
I'm not pro war on poverty necessarily, but I think
But
you should
out of
have.
curiosity, do you know how much of the budget is spent on poor people?
No, I don't.
Less than 30%. The problem with liberal capitalism is the fact that it cannot efficiently use the resources it takes from individuals to then help poor people. If we lived in a truly capitalist society, like 1800s America, there were very efficient organizations that were charities that helped poor people. Like when Trump says he wants this job training program, I'd rather have companies fund their own job training programs so they need to hire people because they realize it's more efficient than waiting for government to do something. Or when you look at welfare, welfare is a permanent system of letting people be unemployed. The thing is, public groups would fund poor people if they worked. The thing is, governmental interference in the social safety net, social security net, social safety net will never be as strong as an actually altruistic culture. And the problem is we have lost our altruistic culture when you look at statistics like what conservatives and liberals give to charity. Because liberalism has actually destroyed personal altruism.
Well, this is I don't think you understand what I mean by liberal capitalism. I don't mean liberalism as in the left. I mean it as like individualism. You know, the classical form of liberalism. But I'm just saying that according to a libertarian, having a social safety net would be against their principles. But it wouldn't be
according to
against.
a libertarian, a state government could still do that. The federal government has just no place for it.
I'm not so well. That's more like a federalist or a constitutionalist
Many
than a
libertarians
libertarian.
are federalists to the point where they're like, we'll still vote against it, but if the state allows it, then the state allows it.
Maybe, but I've always sort of understood libertarianism to be against any state power.
Well, yes. I mean, the libertarians are personally against state governments having too much power, but we understand that states have numerous and indefinite powers.
Yeah, but if all right, let me just ask you: is it against your principles for either the federal or the state government to provide a social safety net?
Yes, because it just doesn't work.
Well,
And you have
that's
to,
a pragmatic
you have to
argument.
theft in order to have that social safety net.
So you think taxation is theft then?
Yes.
Well, that's I guess
Interesting.
the difference between you and I, because I don't
Well,
really believe it's theft.
And
If you
taxation is
don't
kind
pay
of
your
necessary.
taxes, what happens to you, Steve?
What's up, Liberty?
Oh, what's up, guys?
Maybe we should give him time to talk and kind of talk for a little bit, then we'll get back
I
into
was
it.
just saying, it's kind of, even if it is theft, in the sense, it's kind of necessary because without it, you're gonna have a lot of people like how it is now, where there's so much instability in the United States because of the wealth between the top 1% and the bottom 99% is so high to the point where people are starting to get really upset about that. And so, that far leftists have been advocating for is that you redistribute all the wealth back to the bottom and kind of stabilize it to stop people from rebelling, which is why taxation is somewhat. I feel like taxation has to exist to an extent that, and you need some way to fund certain people like the police and like the firefighters and all of that.
Well, yes.
Important places.
So.
Well, that's kind of where I disagree, because you're sort of advocating for wealth redistribution, and I don't like wealth redistribution. I just think that if you're super poor, there should be a crutch for you to lean on until you can get back into the action. That's the extent of what I think the social safety net should be.
I never said taxation is unnecessary. Group defense is a valid form of self-defense. So if we have to fund our group defense through taxation, not my favorite thing, but necessary, right? But the problem is, Liberty, do you believe that we live in a capitalist country?
Capitalist country?
Yes. Do we have a capitalist method of economics?
What do you mean by like capitalist? I think we do in the sense that we like I give you money, you can give me something back in exchange.
Is our system of economics a truly capitalist system?
I'd say no, because there's like a lot of crony capitalism going on.
Yes. So there's only a wealth gap between the rich and the poor because we live in a state capitalist system. If we had actual capitalism, there would not be as much of a wealth gap between the rich and the poor. We would not need the secure social safety net as much as we would need it.
Well, why is that in your opinion?
Well, state capitalism is just another form of collectivism.
Well, that doesn't answer my question.
Think about it this way, right? So state capitalism chooses the winners and losers before it even happens, in my opinion. So, yeah. It's the state mandating where the money of the consumer must go through harsh regulations that pick the winners, therefore establishing the strong new bourgeois of the capitalists that win, determined by the state. And then those bourgeois, the new capitalists, or the remaining capitalists, have even more capital to expand their influence and to expand their corporations, to the point where you have things like Monsanto, who literally have patents on fucking plants. Also, our intellectual property laws are fucking draconian. That's why we see harsh drug prices. And then we see, as soon as the intellectual property claim runs out, there's $3 EpiPens.
I think there can be true capitalism alongside with a social safety net.
Honestly, if we lived in a society like yours, where the social safety net was very minimal, it wouldn't be the worst fucking thing in the world. Right? I'll ride the freedom train.
No, it wouldn't.
I'll ride the freedom train, right? I'm not the libertarian purist who refuses to vote for anything if it still has an unjust government power. I will vote for it if it limits the power or if it limits the intensity of that power. Anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are some libertarians who refuse to vote for tax cuts unless it's all tax cuts go to 0%.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, honestly, if you propose your economic system, I'd vote for it in a heartbeat over what we have right now. And then I'll complain about it later.
So, go ahead.
You know what, the one thing I think everyone can agree on? I think we need some kind of, like, societal revolution to overturn the people in the government right now. Because otherwise we probably won't be able to get any of this stuff done because of how stuck up and partisan Congress has become.
I certainly disagree with that.
Did you say revolution?
Point me towards a revolution that has actually worked, aside from the American Revolution.
Battle of Athens, Tennessee.
Well, that wasn't a revolution. That was like...
It was. They literally disbanded the county government.
That's kind of a good point. But more so, we need some kind of way to get the people who are corrupting the politicians, at the very least, out. So
a cultural revolution.
Yeah, basically. If not, some kind of way to get these people out of the position they're in order to establish the things we want.
So you use the power of the ballot box.
Yeah. If we're voting for somebody who isn't corrupt,
Well, then that's the fault of that's democracy and how it's failed. Um, our problem is we'd rather vote in corrupt people who promise us hope and change than people who will actually bring hope and change.
Yeah.
So
that's
just,
so true.
I think we honestly would have to get rid of political tribalism first before we can have any true social cultural revolution.
Yeah, I think that's the case too, and that has to happen as well.
Although we're sort of in a position where we're sliding from political tribalism into racial tribalism, and I think to stop that from happening, I think one valid solution would be to reinforce political tribalism, because then
Sorry, what was
people
the solution?
to reinforce political tribalism, because then people are less focused on racial tribalism.
Well, the problem is racial tribalism just evolved out of political tribalism. I honestly think
maybe
the evolved form of political tribalism is racial tribalism. All forms of collectives jump off of each other. I could think it's kind of like an upside down pyramid, right? If you take out the bottom rung and push it out, then the whole thing will collapse.
maybe like we could perhaps have sort of a pan-individualist movement where we just promote individualist talking points, and those are pretty universal in my opinion. Like I think there are many left-wingers who would describe themselves as individualists.
Oh, I have an example. I applied to Georgetown, right? And so I had to get an interview. My interviewer wasn't a Marxist, but he was for a long time, and he's more democratic socialist now. And we probably had 40-minute discussion about the collapse of individualism in America.
Huh? Really?
I love the dude. I think he's amazing. But anyway, he's against the modern culture, campus culture. He's against the modern social justice movement, other than their goals they're trying to create, right? He's against the methods and how they act.
There's a video up on YouTube that's really, really extremely scary. It's basically a bunch of teachers. I can't really explain it, but it's basically a teacher, a professor. This guy, keep in mind, this is a college professor. He sat there and said blatantly that logic, reason, and the scientific method and the Constitution is racist. I'm not lying. There's a video up on YouTube of him saying this to other teachers in the education system.
Let me guess, none of them denied it.
What? Say it again.
Let me guess, none of them denied that. Sorry, I've been laying in bed for like the last hour, and I'm gonna like prepare lunch really quickly, so I just made a little bit of noise.
All right.
It was like an investigation that was done, like kind of like Project Veritas investigation.
Yeah.
And the education system was like an investigation, so they went inside the education
It's probably
system.
campus reform then.
I guess it was. I'll link the video into the description if I
stuff, but on campuses.
And do you know why they believe that?
I'm not sure. I think it's because
I'm
they're
sure.
What can you say?
They believe that because they are cultural Marxists, right? They view culture and society as part of the like Marxist materialist dialectic there. So instead of framing the classes as the bourgeois versus the proletariat, they frame it as blacks versus whites, essentially. And this is...
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there on the whole why logic thing.
Sorry,
it's because
what?
critical thinking is inherently anti-collectivist and pro-individualist. Because you better yourself through it. You don't better anyone else through it.
Yeah, but the reason why they oppose...
why it's become everything is racist now, because it enforces the collectives of the races and racial tribalism. But I think that's why we see so much of an anti-critical thinking culture coming out now, where statistics don't matter, it's just your feelings. Why math is racist, or stuff like that.
Well, they think that because like logic, reason, and all the other things that you said is racist, they believe that because all of these things were invented by white people, and the Western world has, in their view, been exploiting the non-white countries and areas of the world for centuries, and it's their duty to sort of revolt against it culturally and sort of overturn the white power structure, as they call it. So this is why they say that everything is racist, because they want to erode Western civilization and bring on sort of a cultural Marxist revolution, which they think will ultimately lead to an economic revolution. And this is all coming from like the Frankfurt School and critical theory and all of that. It's pretty heavy stuff.
All right, found it. I'm going to link it right now. You have to see this for yourself. It's insanity.
Sorry, my Discord crashed.
Did you hear what I said?
About the Frankfurt School and Logic and Reasoning.
Yeah.
How,
That's what it's called, the White Privilege
by third world
Conference.
nations and racial minorities have been exploited by the West.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
What do you think about that?
I think that's fucking insane.
Well, obviously, but this is the sort of thing that these Marxist professors are teaching, and I think this is where the SJW movement actually comes from. Are these Marxist professors who grew up during the hippie movement and during the '60s cultural revolution, and they're sort of imparting the influences, the original influences of the Frankfurt School and critical theory and postmodernism. They're turning it into a sort of puppet ideology that they're feeding to these college students called social justice. And that's what social justice is. It's sort of a puppet ideology of critical theory and social Marxism.
Here's the thing. The social justice movement is literally the revenge of academia. Back in the 60s and 70s, the social justice movement lost during the Battle of Berkeley, honestly. Berkeley was the hub of free speech, and social justice lost there. The social justice movement there. But the professors never died. The professors never left academia. They just lost, and now they're back out for blood, and they've just created this whole culture of minions.
Yeah. It's kind of scary, and the scarier part of it is that is the way that society is reacting to it, because I said it before that the alt-right is a reaction to social justice, and they haven't just begun the Marxist identitarianism. They've kickstarted the fascist identitarians into believing what they believe. And so we're going to have, like, mark my words, 10 years down the line after social justice has died down a bit, we're going to have all these fascists coming out of the woodwork from the alt-right movement that was kickstarted by the social justice. It's just a domino effect.
Hello?
What?
I kind of agree with that, but it's not ever been cool to be fascist, right?
No, it hasn't. But
Has
the
been
social
like
justice
counterculture.
warriors.
There's like social justice has always been counterculture. It's always been. But I'm going to disagree with you. Fascist identitarianism is not that far from Marxist identitarianism. Really, you just transfer whites for proletariats and blacks for blacks, Jews, socialists, and gays for the bourgeois, and you've got Marxism.
Yeah, that's basically the beauty of it. It's really fascism isn't derivative of Marxism. Marxism and fascism are derivative of collectivism in general.
Actually, that's wrong. Fascism was created by a Marxist who never gave up his Marxist principles. He integrated his nationalist ones.
Oh, who was that?
I forget his name, but I forget his first name. His last name is Gentili.
Oh, I forget his first name.
I think it was Giovanni Gentili, I think. But yeah, so fascism is just derived from communism.
I know that Nazism, National Socialism, is basically a synthesis of socialism and Aryan mythology.
Yeah, Actually, a lot of fascists don't like National Socialism.
I've met some that do.
That's because they're usually Nat socks.
Yeah.
But like when you talk to like the old school fascists, they're really anti-Hitlerism. It's interesting.
Ah.
I'm not saying that they're any good because of that, but it's just interesting how many fascists actually hate them.
And they'll say stuff like, well, socialism is good if it's white people doing it. The reason why socialism failed in all the other countries was because there were a bunch of minorities and Jews. It's not because socialism is inherently retarded.
Dude,
No.
Forget this whole Jewish conspiracy thing. Why do so many Irish people love gun control? That's the real question.
Irish people?
Yeah, literally.
I do have an
control-
Irish friend
gun-
who's pro-gun control.
A bunch of famous pro-gun control people, they're all Irish.
That's weird. I'm completely against gun control. Main problem is, look up all these shooters. They're on some kind of prescription medication, some antidepressant, and they're mostly people we know that have been crazy before. So it's a case of us not being able to prevent the mentally ill people from getting their hands on the weapons, and now it's not screening them properly.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be great if we found out that all the mass shooters were also Irish?
Dude, it's a conspiracy now. I bet.
Fucking potato munchers.
Dude, how many potatoes does it take to kill an Irishman?
None.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go to the bathroom really quickly, so I'm not going to mute myself. I'm just going to not press to talk, but I'll still be listening, so don't worry.
Alright. So, how's it going?
So, yeah, what's up, man? Are you for gun control or against gun control?
Oh, I'm against gun control.
Okay, what about death penalty?
I don't really care about the death penalty, but if you're gonna have, like, say, if someone just, goes nuts with a gun, kills a bunch of people, and then, like, takes a guy, cuts their head off, and eats their brains, or some crazy shit like that, why do you want those people in society? Just kill them off, I guess, I don't know.
My argument against the death penalty isn't that people that deserve to die. It's more of the fact that the government can't really kill the guilty people without killing some innocent people as well.
I'm against the death penalty in general, but there is one time where I actually believe it should happen.
Can you?
It's when people
When they're
are
a communist, you should throw them out of the helicopter.
Society from inside of prison.
Say it again.
The only time the death penalty should ever be used is when the individual is a threat to society from inside of prison.
I can't really see a case where that could happen.
That's like mobsters who were able to run rings of crime inside prison should have gotten the death penalty because they have proven the purpose of prison is not to keep people inside; it is to keep them from outside of society. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if they commit violent crimes from inside of prison, obviously the prison system has not met its purpose, therefore we should go to more extreme measures. But I also wouldn't mind if someone went Jack Ruby on a freaking pedophile,
And I can kind of see that, but the problem is they kind of have tried to do that in Chicago with the gang leaders, and what's happened is they would splinter off into all different types of gangs because now they don't have any type of leadership, and so they just make their own games, and you just have a lot more problems that way as far as the outside world.
Didn't think of it that way, but still, you know what I mean? Obviously,
Right.
Prison has failed its primary function.
That's a good point. I have to think about that.
No other way to protect this. Like, the purpose of prison is to protect society. If we can't protect society through that prison, and I think that we should go to even more extreme measures, like some security prisons for those people. But if they can still pull off jobs from inside those, then obviously the prison system does not work for them.
I think even if I were to agree with that very extreme measure, I think we should try to look for all other possible options, like finding out how they're able to get to the outside world, figure out who's there probably is somebody from inside the prison, like a guard who's corrupt or something like that.
But if we still can't stop it after trying that, then you gotta. My main problem with the death penalty is that the government decides who lives and who dies, right?
Yeah.
So, but if it's been proven that they need to die, because of that, then they need to die. You know what I mean? If we still can't figure out how to stop their crime ring from inside a prison after investigating it, in a maximum security prison, for example.
Yeah. Oh well.
I get my iPad really quickly, so that way it's just clear volume for my part. It will take me 5 seconds. I'll still be on the phone. It's just I'm on push to talk right now, so it might be a bit, not as much.
All right.
It'll take me like 5 seconds to get it.
What's your position on immigration?
Immigration.
I'm actually for kind of closed borders as long as we have. I'm kind of become more hopping on this. Why bring in socialists?
I've kind of under the belief that we should only bring in people who are as close to our societal values as possible and reject those who are not.
I think we should go to a more meritocratic system.
Yeah, I definitely think we should have a point-based system instead of...
But if we have open borders, there's no way to prevent socialism coming to America.
That's one of the problems I have with immigration, too, where every time the minorities, they come into countries... I mean, not the countries, the states, they basically become blue states because they don't vote for anything else but the Democrats. And so it kind of becomes a case of you're going to eventually have, like, the entire Congress just become completely Democratic, and it becomes impossible to vote Democrats out of office.
Mm-hmm.
So
although,
it's kind of...
second and third generation immigrants, especially in the United States, are much more assimilated into United States culture.
I'd actually somewhat disagree. I think that immigrants themselves are much better than the first and second generation Americans that they birth here.
Well, maybe, but I guess that's true. But the thing you said about socialism coming to the U.S., it might not necessarily be true, because if someone's escaping from a socialist country, then they're obviously not going to support socialism in the U.S.
Have you noticed how many Latin Americans flee socialism in Latin America then still vote for hard Democrats in the South?
Maybe. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that my grandfather immigrated from Hungary, from communist Hungary, and he hated communism, and he voted for Reagan and all that, so,
Like, I get what you mean, that there are many who will abandon socialism when they immigrate here, but there are many who see it as a romanticized possibility of what could be.
Like, it's just a form of just went wrong kind of argument.
It's kind of the same thing with Islam. Many immigrants to America who are Islamic are way more American than their kids and grandchildren, because their kids and grandchildren develop this romanticized view of what Islam could be in America. No?
Yeah. I have to think about that, I don't know.
I've noticed...
But, then again, like, my parents aren't socialists or communists, even though they were descended from someone who immigrated from a communist country.
I'm not saying it's 100% of the time, but it's too dangerous to allow open borders.
I have to agree with that. There's too much. It's just way too much influence they've begun to have.
Yeah, I don't want open borders either, because...
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Alright, I just switched over to the iPad, so I was making sure. Sorry.
Alright. Because, open borders is usually not a good route. See what's going on in Europe. Because you don't want...
Don't get me started on Europe. I'm just gonna make a rage fit. It's absolutely disgusting. It's actually what Sweden is doing that they're allowing to happen, just to fucking appease the Islamic immigrants.
Like, let's go back to what we were saying earlier, though. Like we said, our government owes very little to non-Americans.
Right.
You know that they actually value immigrants more than the veterans?
Democrats?
Yeah.
Well, actually, Claire McCaskill tried to implement a bill that would protect veterans' pay during the government shutdown, the only good thing she's done. But guess who shut it down?
The Republican Party?
Mitch McConnell.
Oh.
So, when people say that Democrats care less about veterans than they do immigrants, it's just political games, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Okay, so... I wanted to talk about one more thing. So the State of the Union, do Democrats have super glue attached to their assholes? The chairs.
Yeah, maybe the chairs are malfunctioning, you know? Those
the only
chairs.
time they didn't have the super glue attached to their asses was when they were getting up to leave.
Oh yeah, no, it's like those prank chairs where you sit in it and it's hard to get up just because of the shape of the chair. Like, maybe we should investigate whether those were placed in the
Democratic side.
on the Democratic side of the hall.
Most interesting.
There was no reason for them not to get up for the kid who posed. You're the anti-Trump party. Don't clap for Trump. Whatever. It makes you look bad, but I don't really care. But you should still clap for the people he brought. The cop who adopted the child of a crack addict. Why not clap for him? The kid who put flowers on the soldiers' graves, like 40,000 of them, or the flags, sorry, not flowers. Why not clap for him?
They didn't clap for the fact that blacks have the lowest unemployment right now.
Yeah, and then the North Korean guy who walked across North Korea and China on crutches because his leg was just destroyed by a train. They didn't clap for him, and the fact that he's broadcasting stuff to North Korea over the radio. Like, what the actual fuck? I get it. I get it. You think that like black unemployment is low because of Obama. Whatever. You're not going to clap for Trump because of that. I don't like it, but I understand the reasoning behind that. But you've just cornered yourself as this anti-Trump party now, and you cannot recover from that.
Now, I don't know if this was an intentional move by Trump, but I'm going to assume it is for this conversation. That was a genius political move by Trump to do the State of the Union in the way that he did, because he knew that the Democrats were going to not want to cooperate. They were just going to sit there and look like they had lemons in their... What?
Start playing with their dentures like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, they would just sit there looking like they had lemons in their mouths, while Trump said whatever he said. So he decided to make everything completely innocuous and like positive about America, so that when he had like pro-America, pro-people messages, the Democrats would look like asses sitting there and not clapping for it. Genius move by Trump there.
The Capitol is a living monument to the American people.
Yeah.
You know what's even more ironic?
It was his best speech ever, in my opinion.
43% of the people who actually watched the address, 43% of Democrats actually approved of it.
Yeah.
So that makes it look like you're just being partisan pieces of shit and not acknowledging the fact that Trump is actually trying to do at least some level of good, even if you don't agree with a lot of his policies.
Yeah, I didn't agree with a lot of his policies. I thought his speech was damn good. I kind of liked his immigration reform. I don't think that the Dreamers should get citizenship, per se. I think they should be given legal residence, because at this point it's going to be too cost expensive, and they've had a contract with government that they could live here through the Dreamers Act. But I don't think they should be given citizenship, and definitely not only 2 more years longer than it takes most people to get citizenship.
So, yeah.
Like, the normal pathway to citizenship for a legal immigrant is about 10 years. He wants to get it done in 12 years. I just think that's bullshit.
What about the memo that was released yesterday?
I have not had the chance to read it, but I don't need a memo from a congressman to let me know that the FBI and intelligence agencies have been abusing FISA warrants.
Yeah.
But the Republicans can't complain after the fact that only 6 Republican senators voted to not extend FISA warrants without appropriate protections for the American people.
Yeah, I'm really against mass surveillance.
You can't complain about mass surveillance harming your party when you voted to increase mass surveillance without protection.
It's like, oh no, I'm being spied on. Yeah, because you voted for people to be spied on, and now you're all torn up about the fact that you were spied on.
I saw this hilarious tweet. It doesn't really relate to it, but what about the NSA agent who's been watching me cry into my webcam all year and has never once checked up on me or tried to help me? Cut the harmful people out of your lives in 2018. So I'm reading Henry David Thoreau right now for homework while we're talking, called The Law of God and the Law of the Land. And he's just brought up this interesting point on democracy. If the majority votes the devil to be instated as God, why should does the minority have to wait and hope that that they can finally reinstate God as the true God?
Ask it again. I can't understand.
He said, here, let me read out his direct quote. The amount of it is, if the majority vote the devil to be God, the minority will live and behave accordingly and obey the successful candidate, trusting that some time or other by some speakers casting vote, perhaps they may reinstate God.
So, Thoreau was red-pilled against democracy.
He wasn't really anarchist, but he was a very strict monarchist and individualist, obviously. Because he's talking about, this is right after this guy named Banks, I believe. He was a slave who went to Massachusetts and got arrested under the Fugitive Slave Act. This was written in 1854. And there were riots in Massachusetts, and they actually tried to storm the courthouse and free the black dude. This is actually the second time a U.S. Marshal died in the line of duty. Because the U.S. Marshal was killed. But anyways, eventually they lost the case, and the guy was transported back to Virginia to his slave owner. He's talking about lawyers and judges here. He's like, they persist in being the servants of the worst of men and not the servants of humanity. The question is not whether you or your grandfather 70 years ago did not enter an agreement to serve the devil. That service is not accordingly now due, but whether you will not now, for once and at last, serve God, in spite of your own past recreancy or that of your ancestor, by obeying that eternal and only just Constitution, which he and not any Jefferson or Adams has written in your being. So what do you guys think about that? He's very anti-constitutionalist, which is interesting.
I disagree with the anti-constitutionalist argument, because I think it's a gateway to authoritarianism. Because the idea of a constitution is to enshrine the values of the nation and the individual rights of the people in there. For example, the right to freedom of speech, the right to bear arms. If we redrafted the Constitution every 10 years or so, like Jefferson wanted to do, then do you think we would have all those rights, or would people be influenced by demagogues to vote them away?
I'm just interested because the point is, he is arguing for a radical change and to abandon the previous conditions that we've allowed. Which is very much what we're talking about. How radical should we be in our political goals?
I don't think very radical at all.
Well, he's not arguing for violence, but he's arguing for a radical shift without little... it's very liberal in the fact that he's arguing for a radical shift with not a whole lot of time change.
I'm generally against radical shifts because there's a large opportunity for...
I'm not sure where my mom is.
Even a radical...
Is she in her room? No. She might have went out. Sorry, that was my dad.
Okay. Because I think radical shifts in society open the door to demagogues who will seek to take control of it. And really the only time in history where this didn't happen was in the American Revolution. And this is sort of why I'm against revolutions in general.
Battle of Athens, Tennessee, we've been over this.
Yeah, but that's not like a countrywide thing. That's just in this small county within a greater society.
But it's still the same proposal. I'm not arguing for a violent revolution. I'm just saying, how quickly should we go towards liberty?
Here's another problem with a violent revolution I didn't really think about. I don't even think it's necessarily even that possible, considering the technology the government and us have now.
The British Empire also said a bunch of drunk farmers with muskets couldn't stand up to the technological might that is the British Empire.
Yeah, but if the British Empire really thought that the colonies would be lost, they would have put it down more quickly. It's basically a logistical error on the British's part that the United States exists today.
That's true, but what portion of the army and military in general would join the government against the American people?
I would say a large part, if they could be convinced that they weren't that they were going to be fighting for the American people all along. Like, just just think, in a time where the people rose up to start a revolution against the government, then do you think that the people would be seen as trying to preserve liberty and things like this? Or to the majority of people, would they be seen as a disruption, a force that's going to destroy society?
Well, most revolutions in history have been leftist revolutions, violent revolutions, that is. And that is against our nation's founding principles. But what if this is just a hypothetical, but if a libertarian violent revolution happened, it would obviously happen because government had gone too far.
Perhaps. Yeah, when there's no other alternative, like when you're essentially in a
totalitarian state.
Yeah, when your government's turning into a police state, then I guess as a last-ditch effort, you can try to
we're kind of already past the turning into a police state part, in my opinion.
You know this Russian dude. I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist, but this guy predicted the rise of Marxism in America.
Oh, are you talking about Yuri Bezmenov?
Yep.
Wait, what?
He was basically a Russian KGB. He was around the communist era, the Soviet Union.
No, yeah. Was he the guy to the Democratic Party? Is just the lapdog of communism?
No.
It's him basically predicting the. Sorry, you go ahead.
He defected from the Soviet Union. He was a KGB agent, and he was like in propaganda and stuff like that. And he defected from the Soviet Union and went to America, and sort of uncovered what had been going on in the KGB, and he sort of warned everybody about what we now know today as cultural Marxism. Because the KGB was focused mainly on what he called demoralization, which is going into countries and demoralizing them and trying to chip away at their institutions and seed it with communism and Marxism, so that
right? Well, he wasn't wrong. I mean, look what's happening today.
Yeah, that's I don't know if it's necessarily 100% the Soviet Union or more sort of the 60s revolution. Maybe both. I don't know. I think both the Frankfurt School and the KGB have at least a role to play in the modern day sort of rise of Marxism.
What I'm curious about is what stage are we at with it right now? Because he mentions there's 5 stages, I think.
Well, Vladimir Lenin once said the road to state capitalism is the quickest path to communism. Let me read the exact quote. Because it makes people disenfranchised with the idea of capitalism, because they see that the collectivism of state capitalism is just bringing about the wealth gap between the rich and the poor, like you said.
Right.
So, honestly, Republican policy about state capitalism is probably the quickest thing that will
lead us down into communism.
Yeah.
I disagree strongly. I really don't think that the neocons or the corporatists have the ideological structure of Marxism in any shape or form.
No, they're not doing this on purpose. But I'm saying that that will be the result of their that's the result of their actions.
Oh, okay.
Speaking about the corporatists,
I don't necessarily agree with that. Let me just say that.
Speaking about corporatists, did you know that the Federal Reserve is the biggest is the core of this elitist system? That they've been that's one of the reasons why you see the prices of everything keeps going up. They've been inflating the system, them and the big banks.
Oh yes, no. The Federal Reserve is probably the largest threat to American liberty known to man.
What would be the alternative to the Federal Reserve?
A non-government organized money system. I'm against inflation. I'm actually for a gold standard, or at least a non-inflated currency. At all.
Well, doesn't inflation sort of drive the economy?
It does for a short amount of time, but it also creates the business bust boom cycle.
Well, if you have moderate inflation, because if you have moderate deflation, then what that means is the currency is
Valued more.
increasing in value slowly. And what that does, this is sort of during the Great Depression, is why buy bread now when I can buy it tomorrow and it'll be cheaper? So it slows the economy down and people don't buy as much. But with inflation, it's like, I have to buy bread today or else tomorrow it'll be more expensive.
Here's the thing. Inflation creates the business boom-bust cycle. Do you know what that is?
I have an
I'm not
idea.
sure where.
Yeah.
That's the economy will rapidly rise and grow because of inflation, because it creates this unnatural level of spending, right? And once this level of spending catches up to people, the system eventually crashes, much like the 2008 housing crisis. Because houses were bought due to this false... It wasn't necessarily inflation, but it was this false sense of economic security. This is just an example, right?
Yeah, that and what was happening was the government had forced the banks to give out subprime loans, and so them. That or the banks was doing it themselves.
It influenced them, it incentivized them to do it, but it did not force them.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yes, that's the thing. Also, all banks are funded by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve offers them security money, basically, so that way they can have more loans. The fractional reserve system is a horrible method of economic lending.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why is the federal government running the independent banks at all? I can understand like regulating them to an extent, but just straight up just being associated with them in that kind of sense sounds like it's like pretty fishy.
Hold on, I'm just going to read the Lenin quote I found. If in approximately 6 months' time state capitalism became established in our republic, this would be a great success and a sure guarantee that within a year, socialism will have gained a permanently firm hold and will have become invincible in this country.
Yeah, but he was talking within the context of the Marxist ideals. Like,
I know.
That doesn't mean that any system which becomes state capitalist will become socialist.
But it is,
and I don't even agree that the United States is state capitalist anyway. So
state capitalism is a large threat that will disenchant people of capitalism. You have to admit.
What do you think about the Dow falling 650 points yesterday?
It's the necessary correction to the crazy and it wasn't an organic rise, right?
Right.
Like, this was just pure optimism. There was no real reason for it.
Yeah, I think it's due to fall much more than 650, because if you look at a graph of the Dow from like 1980 until now, it goes like, up and down and slowly up and down, and then once you get to, mid basically right after the 2009 crisis, it just shoots up like whoop,
Sorry, I accidentally closed Discord. What were you saying? You said up from the 1980s what?
The Dow just sort of goes up and down sort of slowly, and then by the time you hit 2009, 2010, it just shoots up. And that's... I definitely think that most of the companies are overvalued.
Yeah, no, the Dow is down another 665 points today. Today.
Not today, yesterday.
No, I'm checking Yahoo Finance right now.
That's because the stock market isn't open on Saturdays.
Oh, whoops, my bad.
Another thing, the reason that things are now is a lot of our infrastructure is set up. Everything in today, you need a car to get around everywhere. It's not like that in other countries. Like you need to go take your car to go to the store, to go to school. You can use a school bus, but school is basically the only place that you can really go without need for a car.
You do realize that all subways are run by government, right? Pretty much in America. All public form of transportation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there is a huge efficiency drop, actually, between the privatization of public transportation like the subway, and when the U.S. government took it over, or local governments took it over. That's when they stopped working. before trains ran on time, subways ran on time, there's always enough space. It would work. And where do you live? Just curiosity, you live in like a big city?
I live in Florida.
Well, like just big city, small city, what?
I'd say it's a big city in Jacksonville.
Well, I know people who live in New York who have never owned a driver's license. I don't live in New York, but have never owned a driver's license because they don't need a car. So I think it's just
Yeah, but that's because But I'm saying like in New York and like the small towns are an exception. In most of the country, you don't really have a choice but to drive a car.
And in California, they tried to get this hyperlink infrastructure, right? Whatever that's called, I forget what it's called. It was basically a super fast subway. They can't get it to work. It's behind schedule. They can't fund it because it just takes so much damn funding. That they're behind schedule and above the budget that they promised. And I don't even think it'll be built. The Reason TV has a couple of good videos on that, by the way.
So
I didn't look at them then.
Right. I just want to get this on record because I'm predicting that we're having a stock market crash. And I just want to look back at this video a year, 2 years from now.
Are you recording this?
Yeah, I've been recording
cool.
from the beginning.
Wow. Okay, just didn't realize that. I thought this was
Sorry.
Oh,
Do you not
I'm
want me to
fine
put
with
it
that.
up?
Oh no, I'm
It's cool.
I don't care. I just didn't realize you were recording, so I was just like making jokes like the gay Jews run everything. When I talk about collectivism, so hopefully no one takes that out of context.
No,
Another thing about transportation. There's a great video that Adam Ruins Everything uploaded where where the car companies during like the 20s and the 30s, they basically set up a monopolized based system in each state. So car dealerships and car companies, they're two different businesses. You literally can't compete in a car dealership because they've set it up so to where like you can't set up another dealership where the other dealer is. So you have to go through the dealer to get a car.
Yes, state capitalism.
And the cars would actually be a lot cheaper if you could buy them.
Think about it this way: why is Goldman Sachs still open?
good point.
Because it's kind of like student loans, right? Think about it this way: in student loans, the government promises that they will always back the loan, so that way colleges can cost as much as they want. In our state capitalist system, businesses can act as stupid as they want as long as they're too big to fail, and they don't have to take any real responsibility for their actions. The CEOs of Goldman Sachs, the Bear Bank, whatever it's called, they all got raises during the taxpayer funded bailouts.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder what the economy would look like if the banks were not bailed out.
It would take a sharp drop, but once new banks started forming, I think we would have been fine.
Yeah.
Did you know that there was a major information breach to half of the entire country last year?
Equifax?
Yes.
My friend, so in my econ class, we're doing like a fake stock market game on Market Watch.
Yeah, we do that in our business class. You get like 10,000 fake dollars to start, and then all quarter you buy and sell companies every week.
So someone in my class, what they did is after the Equifax thing happened, after Equifax dropped, they invested in Equifax, and they became the top spot because it went back up slowly.
I know someone who invested fake money into Bitcoin. They got first place because that was during the Bitcoin rise. They got like $5,000 in 1 week just off of Bitcoin.
I short sold Bitcoin after that happened and made a bunch of money.
In real life, or just in that class?
Oh, in the class, the Grayscale Bitcoin investment fund.
Yeah, no.
Do you think, just out of curiosity, you guys think that cryptocurrency could potentially has the potential to replace the currency we have now?
I don't
national
think
currency?
Replace it, but it's definitely a good competitor. Have you ever heard of agorism?
I've heard of it, but
I haven't heard of that.
Basically, it's anarchists and strict libertarians who believe in black and gray markets that can outbeat government markets and forces. So, honestly, I see Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as the best example of modern agorism, in my opinion. Same with the deep web and the dark web. It's called.
I don't think cryptocurrency is going to be a viable option for
I'm not
a
sure if
while.
they'll succeed, but I think they're the best example of modern agorism to date.
They're the best. They're the best thing we have right now.
Cryptocurrency is nowhere near stable enough to be considered a viable alternative. Because if you just compare the fluctuation of Bitcoin to the US dollar, it's basically nothing. People are not going to want to invest their life savings in something as volatile as Bitcoin at the moment.
So, do you know what percentage of the modern dollar is compared to strain 5 to the dollar in 1914?
No. Go ahead.
It's 5% of the dollar in 1914.
But Bitcoin in 2014 was less than 5% of Bitcoin in 2017.
But you guys, what I'm saying is, our currency is still a rapid inflationary currency.
No, but it's not rapid relative to Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin goes up and down, and up and down, and up and down. The dollar has sort of steadily risen for the past 100 years, and it's sort of predictable how much it's going to be worth in the future.
2008, bud.
Well, yeah, but it's not really worth something much different than what it was before 2008.
I'm saying that they both have the same problem.
Bitcoin has it to a much greater degree.
Yeah, it has a larger intensity, but they both have the same problems, and I'd say the dollar still has a very large problem, even if it's less than Bitcoin.
If I had to choose to invest my life savings in the dollar or Bitcoin, I'm just saying I would choose the dollar right now.
I'd choose the dollar too, but I'm saying just because Bitcoin has more problems doesn't mean the dollar still has no problems.
Okay, but because you and I would both choose the dollar, that says that Bitcoin is still not a viable alternative. Because who is going to choose Bitcoin at this point?
Well, do you know what really caused the large crash in Bitcoin? And not the correction, but the large crash.
What?
Facebook said that they're going to stop doing advertisements for cryptocurrencies, and they won't accept cryptocurrencies as a form of payment. And it's the same. It's like Square, when they said that they're going to start accepting Bitcoin, Bitcoin gained legitimacy in the eyes of consumers. Their price went up. But when companies like Facebook said they won't accept Bitcoin, that's when their prices go down, honestly. So it really just is what is legitimized in the eyes of the consumer, and the consumer has an attention span of about 5 minutes. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you guys know that Amazon, their own healthcare system?
Oh yeah, Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, and J.P. Morgan Chase are going to start building their own healthcare company, and I love it.
For some reason, progressives don't like this. I don't know
they're
why.
going to realize that you don't need government to run an effective healthcare system that doesn't screw the consumer.
We're gonna have to see. The only times what they're gonna actually do, it's gonna be run.
What?
I'm curious to how they're gonna Amazon and run this system.
They're going to have to invest all their money into one group and have that one. They can't have 3 different groups run a healthcare company.
That's the thing. What's the biggest problem with health? It's making it so expensive.
One of the biggest problems with healthcare?
Yeah.
It's not healthcare, it's government.
But I should have seen that come in. But like just regulations in general, or is it just like?
Well, the problem is we have too many boundaries in the healthcare industry. We have state boundaries. We have harsh draconian intellectual property laws that make it so that companies can charge consumers way more than the drug is worth for 10 years, and then they charge it less because the competitors come in. But when Martin Scarelli price gouged his EpiPen, there was like a $30 EpiPen set, is insanely cheap that there was available. The problem is consumers aren't wise. They're not asking their doctors to prescribe them the value drugs. They're letting their doctors prescribe them the most expensive drugs possible. The hospital gives the most expensive drugs possible instead of saying, no, I want a cheaper version of that drug that's already out there and I know you have it available.
Well, yeah, you can't accept the consumer to have a general knowledge about medicine in that sense. I mean, that's why we have doctors in the first place. That people can't really take care of themselves in that.
What I'm saying is, there's already proven drugs that are cheaper, that are just like generic versions of it, but we are allowing our doctors and we are allowing consumers are just saying that they want the. It's kind of like saying, no, I want to accept like the Kroger version of chips. I want Lay's chips, right? It really just isn't that different. Okay, here's the thing. So, like I said, there was a version of the EpiPen that literally cost $30 for like a package. I don't really know how much it was per EpiPen because there's multiple in the package. And yeah, it didn't last as long, but it's still much more cost efficient than Martin Shkreli stuff.
Awesome. So you're basically saying that like the differences between medicine is basically like the differences between Beats headphones and like some other headphones.
No, it's not even the quality; it's the prestige. So, like, I don't really know. Are Beats headphones really that much better than like other headphones?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Beats headphones are not that much better than.
Okay, yeah, I don't really use Beats. I don't really know, but yeah. Here's the thing. Like I said, sorry, I'm just looking at Discord really quickly. Trying to just collect my thoughts, but think about it this way. If someone said, hey, it's kind of like advertisements, right? Like celebrity endorsements, right? We kind of like products that get celebrity endorsements, even if they're not that much better than normal products, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, say if Barack Obama endorsed, I don't fucking know, a shoe company maybe. I can't really think of anything. And it costs like $1,000, and you can buy the same shoe. Or, no, say $10,000 because I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass. And another shoe that was like same exact shoe for $300. People would still buy a $10,000 shoe because they're retarded.
Maybe this is the failure of capitalism. People are too stupid to make individual decisions about their lives.
The failure of capitalism is always people, right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying this in jest, obviously. Like,
yeah, but no,
there's no good alternative.
Our problem in healthcare is individuals not being smart enough to realize that they have other opportunities.
And I think the way to solve that would be to we need to reform the education system and have people. We need to teach kids about their health and all that other stuff, so that way when they grow up, we won't be running into these problems where people aren't aware of their options.
Yeah, maybe we should educate people the fact that flu vaccines do not give you autism. And
yes, exactly. That's another thing too. That's why you see that you need a college degree to get almost any job now. It's because in school, and I know this because I'm going to school right now, they're teaching us aeronautics. Nobody's going to use aeronautics when they get older. That's not a class that's valuable unless you're going to college for that specific thing. Yeah. It's really just a waste of your time.
What are you planning on majoring in?
I don't think I'm going to college because there's not any work. Just too much debt. And like there's like most of the people I know that went there, they're just working at like McDonald's now.
Yeah.
But there's no real worth in it anymore. And so I'm chilling out just going into trade. Because trade is actually a little bit more valuable now than college.
I love it when people are like, what thing that has a price increase of $1,000 in like 10 years is worth it, or 1,000%? Sorry, not $1,000. Someone's like, yeah, I hate Bitcoin. I'm like, no, I'm talking about the college education system. Like, the problem with college is like exactly what I said. It's the government. The government says that they will always pay back the money that the people taking on the loans won't be able to pay. So colleges can charge as much as they want. Government has created the debt cycle that they claim that they're fighting.
Right.
Not only that, but the Federal Reserve System is also a debt-based system, so they're making money off of the debt you have.
Yeah, no. If if the government has decided that there's a war on poverty, poverty's won. Damn it.
So, are you planning on going to college, local?
Yeah.
What are you going in for?
I don't know. I'm deciding between biomedical engineering and political science.
Well, one of them's gonna make you money, and the other one,
The other one could allow me to control liberals for my whole life, though.
True, yeah.
I don't know what's worth it, money or fun.
I was thinking civil engineering myself.
I don't like traditional engineering, though. I just get really bored.
Oh, yeah?
That's why I like biomedical engineering, because there's just so much different stuff going on. Like, I know, like, my Georgetown guy who's interviewing me, he's a virologist who's using viruses to study cancer research.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But the thing with biomedical engineering is you gotta take a bunch of biology classes and chemistry classes.
I actually kind of like biology.
Huh.
I like human biology. I don't like traditional biology, right? I think that I don't really need to study the biology of a fucking plant, but, like, when I can learn about things like how to treat ear problems or heart problems, like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well...
Think about biology. Have you guys ever heard of race realism?
Race realism.
I know it's an alt-right thing, but it does have a little bit of merit.
Race science? Is that what you're talking about?
It basically is that what it is. It just states that race is genetic, and that
I don't think it's necessarily genetic, but the problem obviously isn't racism, because we've declared that there's a war on racism, basically. The problem is that there is larger cultural implications in...
Yeah, that's why I disagree. I can agree that there are certain genetic elements of race that makes them, like, their personalities different, but there's also a cultural aspect of it too, where, like, you're going to be a product of your environment. Like, you and I, we believe that... I'm going to assume that everybody here is not insane and everybody agrees that rape is wrong.
Right.
If we were to say that grew up in, like, Saudi Arabia under, like, an Islamic society, we probably would at least condone rape, because that's why they're doing it right now, obviously.
Well,
yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that race is genetic, because it's not like the color of your skin is determined by a social construct. But when people say race realism, a lot of the times the alt-right means that, like, the white race is superior to any other race because of, these reasons, and usually they don't hold up.
Yeah, no, I know Stephen Molyneux does a lot of interesting stuff with that, though.
There's a guy named... I brought it up because there's a guy named Jean-Francis Garapi on a channel called Andy Worski, if you guys have ever heard of him.
JF, yeah.
Never heard of it.
Me and Preston know. He's basically a biologist from Canada, and he argues that he's basically...
fucking Frenchy, though.
But he's a Frenchie, his opinion is invalid. Why are we even talking about it?
Exactly.
Here's the thing.
I don't really like Andy Raceworski because he sort of devolved into cucking for the alt-right via
Who?
JF.
Sorry,
He's giving a platform to the ideas. So at least you can call out and see the fruit of the bullshit.
But he doesn't really have any opinions of his own that he shares. He's like, hey, JF, tell me what I should think. And by the way, we have an alt-right guest today.
Who's JF? Sorry.
The biologist French guy we're talking about.
Oh, anyway, so I just had an interesting discussion with my philosophy teacher the other day, going back to the State of the Union. We're talking about how the Democrats have put themselves into a corner now. He's a Democrat. He doesn't like Trump, but he admitted that you can't paint yourself as the anti-Trump party. You have to fight policy, not people.
So
because
true.
You can kill a man, but you can never kill an idea, right?
Well, they killed Martin Luther King. Well, look what happened.
Yeah, right. But so
exactly.
We were talking about the fact that now Democrats, the politicians at least, have put themselves into a corner where if they work with Trump on policy, they are now demon children, right?
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. It's basically the difference between issue politics and identity politics.
Yeah. So I'm trying to go back into this. It's the problem with humans is always tribalism. Not always, but it's generally tribalism, or at least
Like you guys were arguing at the beginning of the podcast.
I know.
Right.
I'm going back to it because it's interesting. Damn it! You can't tell me what I can talk about.
I'm not.
But I was thinking today, recently, trying to do this podcast. The problem, and I know we use this word a lot, but the problem with identity politics is echo chambers. Do you guys
I don't think we've said echo chamber once so far, so go ahead.
We talk about it a lot normally, though. Do you guys know the YouTuber Hunter Avalone?
No.
Do you guys know YouTuber Dave Rubin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Dave Rubin. But anyway, so Avalone does this video. He goes to this women's march wearing a shirt that says, "Stop being a feminist," I think.
Huh.
Only one person actually had a conversation with him. Or that when I was on screen that was rational.
I heard about that. Yeah, God bless whoever that was.
Yeah.
Like, if we had more of that in society, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems we have right now.
He said but I was watching the video, only one person would go on record with him and have a rational conversation. Like, some people have rational conversations, but the problem is, just because people as a group are irrational, the problem now is that individuals are too scared to leave the group mentality. They're not irrational people. They don't want to become the black sheep of the family, generally speaking.
And I think we need to transition from a society back to issue politics from identity politics, because we've started going down the rabbit hole, and it doesn't end somewhere nice.
That's the thing. That's one of the reasons why I've kind of just abandoned labels like libertarian or conservative liberal, because it's just kind of become a case of, once you kind of try and group all these issues together and make one kind of central ideology, it becomes a case of people being able to create kind of like you know how people used to make a joke about conservatives being like redneck and white and religious Bible thumpers?
Wait, they're not?
Like not how they're doing with liberals now, where it's just all liberals are like social justice warriors and all this and all that. It kind of creates, as soon as you set up a political ideology with certain issues in a political group, you're going to have extremists that stand out between the rest of the rational people, and then it just becomes a case of you debating basically the extremism.
I'm going to disagree with you again. Labels are not the problem. Our tribalism is. If we had labels inherently are not a problem. I always say I'm a libertarian, so people can have a general idea about me going into our discussion. If I just said, I hate government, people are like, oh my god, he's a crazy fucking anarchist, who I don't want to have a rational discussion with. Now, people might still say, he's a crazy fucking libertarian, I don't want to have a rational discussion with him, but that's okay, because then I get them back somehow, by making them look dumb in front of everyone else. But anyway, so my point is, we can't abandon labels. That's a decent part of tribalism, actually, because we can form groups and strengthen our own arguments. But the problem is, when our labels and our groups become echo chambers, like I've said before, that's the point where we reach the bad part of tribalism. Because, like, think about it this way: college Republicans or college, like libertarians, college Democrats. That's actually those are all great organizations, because they're getting these young people who are not great arguers yet. Most young people aren't good at putting their opinions into words and convincing people. There are very few people our age who can do that. It is strengthening their positions and strengthening their skills to make them better orators, make them better persuaders. So if we didn't have that, they'd all just become lazy, people who can't. If you can't persuade someone else to your opinion, you have not actually. You do not understand your opinion, in my opinion, because you cannot accurately. If you can't sound persuasive to someone else, then you really don't understand the benefits of your opinion, in my opinion. That's just my idea.
Right. So we are over the 2-hour mark for the recording.
That went faster than I thought it would go.
I think I'm gonna. Well, you've only been here for maybe an hour of it, but I think I'm gonna end it here and the recording here. I mean, we can still talk, but I just don't want the recording to go any longer.
Yeah, if you make it more than 2 hours, uploading it is gonna be a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah.